welcome back to my kingdom where I am both king and court jester. Today we are defending Silent Hill F. This video will have some spoilers, actually lots of spoilers, some vague, some full on. You have been warned. This video assumes you have either played the game or are very familiar with the story. I will be talking about the plot, so watch out. My first point of defense here is that you do have to play New Game Plus. I'm sorry, you have to. You have to. Seen too many people making value judgments or straight up reviews on the game after only one playthrough or just watching the endings on YouTube. If you aren't interested in continuing, then hey, more power to you. But don't tell me that you feel like the narrative was incomplete when you didn't even see the whole thing. You can argue that it's a time sink to structure the story this way, but I'm not gonna let you argue anything until you finish the damn story. If you are just playing this game on your own or you aren't motivated to see the rest of the story or do New Game Plus because you aren't interested or any other reason, that's completely fine. It's when you're gonna post a public review and make a quality judgment on the narrative specifically without having seen the full story that I disagree with on principle. It's bad form for a critic. All the people upset that the game requires multiple replays have clearly never played an Otome game, or Fire Emblem Fates, or Fire Emblem Three Houses. Fire Emblem Three Houses, oh my god, that game is like 400 hours. To the one guy I saw in a YouTube Shorts comment section who said it sounds like a shoujo romance manga and not a horror game, LOL. Shut the fuck up. You've never read a shoujo romance manga before in your life, you goddamn poser. I'm going to banish you to the Shadow Realm.
I know where this is going.
Only those who have endured Vampire Knight know the true struggle of a maximum bullshit plot. This is the real Silent Hill. This is my Silent Hill. Y'all see one hot guy and get up in such a tizzy. Either that or you know that a kitsune is a shoujo staple, in which case at that point you're already one of the girls. The real problem here is people using shoujo as an insult. Don't piss me off, okay? You could learn a thing or two if you actually picked one up. I'm so dead ass.
You really think there's enough of you to take me down?
This channel's a shoujo safe space. I'm Peach Girl's only fan. There's kind of an icky undercurrent to some of the criticism that because the majority of the initial main cast is young and female, that any of the plot or conflict is then inherently unimportant or petty or without substance. That's where the language of using shoujo as pejorative or calling the plot teen drama comes from, and I don't like it. If it's about young women or in any way welcoming for young women, then it must be vapid and shallow. At this point though, I've started actively staying away from a lot of reactions and discussions of Silent Hill F because, on a more serious note, there are a lot of people modding the game so they can look up Hinako's skirt or take her clothes off or put makeup on her, and these mods have just been downloaded thousands of times, and it just really upset me this time around. More than it usually does, even though this happens all the time. I think because it's a story so explicitly about sexism and a young girl fighting for agency while being physically and psychologically tortured, essentially. And people made these slimy, exploitative mods with so much expediency. So when people say the criticism of gender roles was too on the nose or lacked artistry, and then I see stuff like this, it makes me wonder if we have the luxury of subtlety, if our humanity is always on the line and always up for debate. I'm well aware of the way the gaming space can be for women, and I've had to deal with some of that even on my little channel. It doesn't change how disappointing it is. Silent Hill has a lot of female fans and always has. I guess I just wanted to point out that we've always been here since the beginning. We're just quiet sometimes for our own peace of mind and well-being, but women have always played video games. Women have always made video games. The numbers might be a little higher now, but we were always here. And I guess I just wanted to say that every time this happens, it just makes me sad. We can be pretty cool, and I promise life is a lot more fun when you treat us like people. Everyone benefits. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. Point number 2, the combat is not that bad. It's not flawless. The animation telegraphing can be kind of misleading, and the camera is a little bit difficult. It can get stuck in corners and whatnot. But it's pretty good. It's not bad. It's pretty alright. It's sort of a catch-22 of criticism, where people are saying the combat is too actiony and powerful, also complain about the slowness and clunkiness, and if you say you actually enjoyed it, then they say that you shouldn't, because it's survival horror and it should be unfun and clunky, but they are also upset that the controls are awkward sometimes, but you should also be vulnerable, and Hinako is too powerful, but also the enemies take too many hits to die. The combat's nothing to write home about, but it's perfectly fine, in my humble opinion. Although I do think story difficulty should be called normal instead, because it would have resolved a lot of confusion and stopped some people from picking hard when it clearly wasn't the best experience for them. It says story is the difficulty the game was meant to be experienced on, too? Okay, so call it normal difficulty then? I think there was a lot of people who picked hard for the combat instead of story because they saw story and they thought that was the little baby training wheels difficulty, picked hard and didn't have a very good time with the game. And I think we could have benefited a bit from naming that difficulty normal. I'm actively not great at survival horror as a genre, even though I love it, and I had a great time with the combat on story difficulty, and I had a great time with the puzzles on hard. I thought that was a pretty good setup for me. If you're more of a run than fight survival horror player, then you get more out of this game because you only fight when you absolutely have to. I think I killed less than 5 enemies before the first mandatory boss fight 2 or 3 hours in. I've seen several people say there's too much mandatory combat while showing footage of themselves engaging in non-mandatory encounters. I think certain gamer instincts to explore and kill things go against the tenet of a horror experience, and therefore depending on playstyle you can have a massively different experience with the game. I think if I had engaged in way more combat in the first half, I would have gotten tired of it by the end too, but I didn't. But I've genuinely seen some comments that make it blatantly obvious that the person just hasn't played the game. Which, like, if you want to roleplay in the comments as someone who has played the game even though you haven't, I guess I can't stop you. It's a little odd, but I guess I can't stop you. I really like how the combat works within the story, and we'll get into it a little bit more in a minute, and that Hinako gets more and more aggressive as the story progresses because in her real life she was getting angrier and popping more and more builds. So the combat getting more rip and tear as Hinako got increasingly erratic leading up to the arranged marriage is actually baller. I do understand the criticism that there's too much combat, even if I had a good time personally, because I ran away from like almost everything that I could run away from. If you didn't do that, you probably got sick of it, I understand. Part 3, I think. Well, I thought it was scary. Everyone has different tolerances for horror, so that'll always be a factor, but me personally, I was scared. Horror is maybe the most subjective genre ever in terms of what constitutes quote-unquote scary, because something that terrifies me might be Thursday for you and vice versa. Some things are extra scary when they hit close to home, or sometimes that familiarity makes it not scary at all. Depends on the thing, depends on the person. So when creating a horror game, you can't bank on universal fears. There's horror stories that instead use audience emotional attachments to characters and then threaten those characters with death to create fear, but it's not always practical to kill off people depending on the story. Alongside comedy, I think it's one of the hardest genres to write. Even though I like horror games, I'm not very good with horror stuff. I got weirdly frightened playing Crime Scene Cleaner because I kept thinking, like, this is the level that someone's gonna show up and catch me mopping up this blood. So I was scared the whole time I played it, and that game is tagged as relaxing on Steam. So I admit that the bar is not high. Games can scare me even when they're not trying to, and even when they're not that good. But I think Silent Hill F is good. And I actually broke out in a sweat playing this game more than once. God damn. I was making a joke earlier, but like, she really is a certified thug. That's great. She thugged that out without even making a noise. I heard people say this game wasn't scary. I'm like sweating. I'm sweating. So I don't know if I agree with that take. I've seen a lot of people arguing over how the difficulty and scarcity should be balanced to make the game scarier, but I was scared anyway. I don't need any of that. I'm pure of heart and shaking like a leaf. For the record, I don't think the first Silent Hill games are really that scary at all, personally, especially not Silent Hill 1 these days. And there are several games that I would confidently label and defend as horror that I don't personally find frightening at all. But I kind of take issue with people definitively stating that the game is unscary because I don't think everyone finds the same thing scary as stated earlier. I was scared the first 60% or so of the game until I got the hang of things, and then I could rip and tear in the back 40%. So my experience with the combat lined up with the story and even enhanced the experience in a lot of ways. I was scared for about as long as Hinako was. Ludonarrative harmony, if you will. While you were complaining about the controls, I studied the blade. So for me, the combat was scary for as long as it was supposed to be, and then once you got the fox arm and it's raining weapons in the fog town, combat started being fun. So I'm saying, if you're bad at horror games and you are a good learner, play it on story, it rocks. Those gauntlets of enemies at the end are not meant to be scary because, and I cannot stress them enough, Hinako is not trapped with them, they are trapped with Hinako. Hinako is the danger. There is literally a rampage mode where you are immune to damage. I don't think that slipped in on accident. The whole argument that by the end she's in another dimension and it's not scary anymore and she fights waves of enemies. Okay, so it's a Silent Hill game. They're all like that. Like, I don't believe that you've played a Silent Hill game, at least recently, because they all have so much combat towards the end. Boss fights are normal for Silent Hill games. Other dimensions and waves of enemies are normal for Silent Hill games. Silent Hill's strength is in its psychological horror, environment design, and atmosphere. Silent Hill protagonists stay mowing down enemies. Fighting monsters was never the scary part of Silent Hill. You are literally walking around with a shotgun. Melee weapons don't have durability. You can pummel the creatures to death with one singular 2x4 for the entire game. It's not scary because it gives you the tools to deal with the monsters. What survival horror game doesn't? What are we talking about? Are you a Haunting Ground truther? Fatal Frame's biggest fan? It's odd to me that no one seems to think that the fact that the game's combat system not only encourages fighting but often forces you to might have been on purpose and thematically aligned with the plot. Like I said, Hinako's not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with Hinako. It's impossible to explain without major story spoilers, so I get why most review channels wouldn't say anything, but I don't understand why reviewers complained about Hinako being so strong and the gauntlet of enemies at the end making the game not scary, given the story context. That sequence is heavily implied to be a metaphorical representation of Hinako snapping and murdering multiple people at her own wedding, or fighting to regain agency in subsequent playthroughs. The fact that she is so violent and indiscriminately killing things is a plot point. Hinako being as physically aggressive as she is very important to the story. It was the whole point, I fear. Horror media is something I think you have to go into with an open mind and de facto suspension of disbelief, because it's very easy to invalidate its ability to scare you by maintaining a mindset of, it's just a game. So then you are very aware of how you are in no real danger and partially clocked out of the experience. If you go through a horror game consciously thinking, is this scary? I don't think I'm as scared as I could be right now. You are already engaging with the game in a way that isn't necessarily wrong, but does prime you to be less affected by the horror. Sometimes it can be fun to intentionally let yourself be scared, and I think we often have more control over that than we realize. Truthfully, the scariest game I've ever played is Haunting Ground, because I was so stressed out about the possibility of the dog dying. Also because being a girl is really like that, trust me. It had a dodge mechanic and stamina mechanic too, so don't tell me it's weird for a survival horror game to have a dodge. It's... Don't cite the texts of old to me, which I was there when they were written. The one thing that everybody does seem to agree on is that the story is pretty good. I agree. It's good. I like it. I don't have anything super crazy to say about it. It gives the audience a lot to work with, but also leaves some things ambiguous in true Silent Hill fashion. My read on the story is that Hinako has returned to her hometown after it's been abandoned due to the toxic geysers and other environmental disasters and landslides right before her wedding, and is having the worst trip of her life. The events of the game are then a mix of her 20-something perspective and her high school self, as well as a mix of memories from when the engagement was first set up and right before the wedding, combined with the effect of the White Claudia pills. Each ending is then a version of how her wedding day plays out, depending on how bad her substance use is and how much she aligns with or rebels from the Inari god. But feel free to let me know how you interpreted the events of the story, because I think this is a case where everyone will have a slightly different takeaway, and I think that was very much the point. The narrative approach here is extremely reminiscent of Silent Hill 2. I especially like how nuanced and complicated Hinako's relationship with Mr. Foxmask is. I came away from the story feeling like I had a lot to ponder. Silent Hill fans when anything in the story is confirmed instead of vaguely implied. I will say, because the game is thematically about agency and autonomy, I disagree that Hinako should have been more vulnerable or more helpless. I think it's kind of a surface level critique that would go against the narrative and the thematic heart of the events unfolding. Over the course of the story, Hinako realizes the strength and agency she has and puts them to work. It's her entire character arc. Hinako says multiple times that she doesn't care if she suffers or makes the wrong choice as long as she gets to make her own choices at all. But I found Hinako's journey scary, relatable, cathartic, and I did cry at the scene with her mom in the true ending. I don't know, the acting, the music, whatever it was, something got me. I thought the Fox's wedding ending was particularly interesting and particularly scary in a psychological way. Hinako becomes a thing that Shu and Kotayuki fight over and loses her agency in that ending. The boys have their weird bro moment and Hinako was just kind of also there even though it's her fate on the line. She accepts a marriage she doesn't really want and given the time period and family status is likely trapped there for life. I think people forget a little bit also that with arranged marriages often come with the explicit expectations of the woman bearing children, and Hinako expresses that she has no real interest in having kids in the cutscene on the true end route in the Shimizu residence. So in this ending, Hinako is facing the very real possibility of being pressured to get pregnant and give birth against her will, maybe not by Kotayuki himself, but probably his family, which is straight up body horror and an egregious violation of autonomy. They treat her like a possession, and then they have a #anime moment, and then it's like actually so fucked up though. Conceptually, I like what this represents as a bad ending. In execution, why are they fist bumping in the sunset Mike Guy style? If the dissonance is on purpose, genius. If not, goofy. But I think it was on purpose to some extent because of how sharp the tone shift is in the post-credit scene and how desperate and terrified Hinako sounds. Plus, Ryukishi tends to lean a little comedy sometimes. This is the what society wants end, the everyone fulfills their roles end, which is bad for Hinako. As a Silent Hill girl, I don't really care about the complaints that Silent Hill F doesn't have continuity with the rest of the series. Silent Hill does Olympic numbers when it comes to retcons, continuity errors, and changing its mind. The town, Silent Hill itself, functions completely differently depending on which game we're talking. Silent Hill 2 famously had nothing to do with the plot of Silent Hill 1 aside from taking place in the same town. Silent Hill F fits right in that sense. Aesthetically, it's absolutely a huge departure, and I liked it, but I get if that gave you pause. I think it's a little more subjective and depends on if you were craving more Silent Hill or new Silent Hill. I understand the choice on the developer end though, because the string of not so hot doing Silent Hill titles that were set in America and were aesthetically similar to the OGs were not really doing much for the company. So more of the same hadn't been working for a while. To take a slight pivot, in the true end, the implication is that Kotayuki has a similar relationship to his fox spirit that Naruto does, which I am fascinated by. I am also fascinated by the way Shu, the childhood friend, sucks way more than Kotayuki, the evil-looking fiance, by the end. Kotayuki is still guilty of treating Hinako like a possession, but in the true end where they're taking things slower and he's working on himself, you see the willingness and potential for growth by the end of it all. He doesn't seem like such a bad guy. I for sure thought he was going to be evil at first. Ryukishi 07 has done it again, he got me. Shu, on the other hand, violated Hinako's trust so badly it actually gagged me. Like, what do you mean you gave her psychosis pills? And we know in ending number 1 that she winds up snapping so bad she goes on a murder spree. Here's hoping his ass was kill number 1. Now, the part I don't like. New Game Plus is not different enough from the first playthrough to justify the fact that you have to play it through at least 3 times to get the full story. If the New Game Plus playthroughs had shortcuts or other ways to make it faster, I would not be complaining because I really do like the idea and the recontextualization of the dialogue and the way you have to not take the pills to get to the other endings. I think the pill thing being a health item is really smart. I really like that. It's done well enough that I do see the vision, but it's required third playthrough to get to the true end that I'm side-eyeing. If New Game Plus was 4 or 5 hours instead of 8, I'd be fine with it. And I really think that the subsequent playthroughs should have been shorter than the default or fresh save route. Obviously the combat gets easier and faster with each run and you know where to go and it doesn't take as long as the first run of the game, but I wish it was more different. And I wish more was different specifically because I loved the idea and parts of the execution. And I want more of it. But as it stands, some sort of chapter select or bigger shortcut would probably be in service of the experience, especially for New Game Plus because you get the Sacred Sword right away, and there are no major changes outside of some documents or journal entries until significantly past the halfway point. I also wish the whole substance abuse angle had been explored a bit more. We understand that those are the white Claudia psychosis pills, but why did Hinako seem addicted to them? Like, to the extent that she was. We don't, I just wish we'd gotten a little bit more either differences when she stops taking them, or like some kind of sign that she's having some sort of withdrawal from them in New Game Plus or something along those lines. Just like, it doesn't have to be like a super in your face anything, but a little bit more consequence, ramification of her literally having a pill problem and then cold turkey quitting. I think maybe there was an opportunity to explore that a bit in New Game Plus that we did not really go into. I also think we should have explored the morally not great stuff that Shu did. He's like way worse than Kodayuki, and it could have been expanded on a bit more. Hinako does not seem pissed off at him enough for my taste. Admittedly, there are a few lines that are just kind of awkwardly blunt in English, and I can't say for certain that that's a result of translation making the line clunky and on the nose, but I suspect it is, at least partially. I have grace for translated works because I know maintaining the subtlety and implication of something while also literally translating the meaning and also getting it to match facial expressions is difficult. It means that sometimes a line has to be direct because there's no other way to reasonably translate something. A couple of the "stop treating me like an object" and "you should act like a girl" lines are awkward. That said, I stand by what I said earlier. I am perfectly fine with overt messaging, it's just the clunky phrasing that kind of bothered me. And to be completely honest, sometimes this kind of thing is really on the nose. I have been told to my face more than once to act more feminine, or the infamous "sit like a lady." I have been transvestigated more than once because somebody decided my voice was too deep to be a woman's. I had people on my Batman video tell me I shouldn't talk about Batman because he's not for women. To pretend Silent Hill F is more blunt than the thing it's representing in reality is untrue at best. Yes, it could be more subtle sometimes, and I enjoy subtlety as much as the next guy, but subtle doesn't equal good, and blunt does not equal bad by default. Food for thought. I very much enjoyed a lot of other things, though, that were left very metaphorical and implied, like the whole marriage equals death of a woman as an individual metaphor they had going on with the two Hinakos, as well as Junko's appearance, and the true nature of Hinako's relationships to her friends being left somewhat ambiguous. I think the game was actually exceedingly competent at being subtle about certain things when it wanted to be. All of the male characters in Silent Hill F are very nuanced, and none are strictly evil, not even the dad. You see all of this on the true end route, so some more food for thought there. Conclusion. I get it if you thought the combat wasn't fun or that the New Game Plus stuff was too time-consuming, but there's so much bad faith or underinformed critique, and I liked it, so I felt like yapping. It seems to me that every single person has different expectations for what Silent Hill should be, and given that, I think Silent Hill F delivers very well. A lot of the reviews I saw directly contradicted each other, and I think that's because everyone had a slightly different idea of what they wanted and what they thought the game should do, also combined with not entirely finishing the story all the way. That means that the conversation around the game has become sort of a mess. Plus, the conversation about the game's difficulty is a mess too, because so many people chose hard difficulty right out the gate because playing games on hard is part of their identity as a person, and then struggled. Story mode is not easy mode, it's a normal difficulty, but picking it would give some people gamer dysmorphia, so they'd rather suffer. How hard a game is not indicative of the quality of its design. Peace and love, it's okay if you didn't like it, this was just my experience with the game, and to all the people out there who were complaining that Silent Hill F wasn't Silent Hill enough in vibes, we're getting a Silent Hill 1 remake, and with the smash hit sales of Silent Hill F, we're definitely getting another Silent Hill game after this, and who knows, maybe next time it'll take place in Denver or something, so chin up.